thanks Ian and Martha and Kurt and the Blueberry Patch and the Ink Tank for having me. This is my first and only year as Poet Laureate, and I do want to make an official act as Poet Laureate. Begin with a proclamation. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Oh, I need my glasses for this. As I said, I'm fully authorized to do this. I'll be told otherwise if not. Steve Fernand, would you go up here, please?
So what?
Proclamation. Whereas prose narrative and fiction that reaches the power of poetry ought to be recognized and prized, and whereas dialogue and dialect in a work of fiction that is credible and authentic as the spoken word ought to be recognized and prized, and whereas originality in structuring fiction that informs and illuminates its theme with the organic unity of poetry ought to be recognized and prized, and whereas a work of fiction that bridges the chasm between populist and elitist modes of expression in both language and content ought to be recognized and prized. Now, therefore, by the power invested in me as Poet Laureate of Gulfport, I hereby proclaim The Fool Rides the Wheel of Fortune by Stephen M. Fernand as my personal best read of 2016. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city of Gulfport to be affixed this 3rd day of April 2016, signed Peter Hargitai, Poet Laureate of the city of Gulfport. Wonderful reading.
How about that? Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'm here to talk to you about traveling to Moonlight. You can hear me like this, can't you? You can hear me? Yeah. I'm used to circulating, and I give me a feeling of intimacy. I met the widow of the author 40 years after he was executed and buried in a mass grave. The author is Antol Szerb, S-Z-E-R-B. He was born in 1901 and killed in 1945, so he lived 44 years. In that time, he was professor of Hungarian literature and English literature. He authored several books: history of world literature, history of English literature. He spent some time at Oxford. He was a Hungarian Jew who was converted to Catholicism. He was married, had no children. I found his book completely by accident when I visited Hungary after our escape in '56. In 1985, we went back with my wife and my children. I showed them the bullet holes where I dodged Russian bullets. There's another book, if you're interested, but I won't get into that now. At any rate, I was, paging through the book, and I thought this is something I could translate and learn how to write prose in the process. So I was doing poetry and studying poetry, and I was warned by my professors not to dabble in the genres because I will fall through the cracks. It's exactly what has happened. And I'm in one of those cracks right now and loving it. Thank you so much. When I was given the translation rights, his widow, Clara Szerb, was reluctant and did not want the work published in her lifetime because she said the work, this book here, may be misunderstood. People may think, especially in the West, that her husband was a closet homosexual. She didn't say homosexual, she said homosexual. There's a difference. One's European, the other is in the West, where we can say, go to Rome and wave a rainbow flag and celebrate who we are. Not in those days. Even in the book, it's subliminal, and she was afraid that I, as a translator and my publisher, would sensationalize the book. I told her that would not happen, trust me. In 1994, 2 days after her death, I published the book as The Traveler. Here's the book. I must say, I don't know why they... What do you think of when you see this picture? Gay or French-Canadian? Actually, in defense of the cover, chosen by my publisher, this is Carlitos, mucho macho Argentine tango singer. There you go. Now, why they put blue lipstick on him? The long history, the notion was to convey the idea of, number one, androgyny and fatal androgyny. Because Antol Serb's beloved schoolmate, Boy Scout friend, with whom he was intimate in a tent, we now know because we have his journals as of 2001. Had this face, a pale, melancholy, aristocratic face. But if we look at this face, this was really how the European aristocrats dressed in the 1910s, 20s, and 30s, and some did apply rouge. If you've seen the movie Death in Venice or read the book, and the reason they have a pale face is because they never went in the sun, they didn't work. Some powdered their faces. To have a complexion like this was considered to be an aristocrat. So he's holding a plane, means he's well-traveled. He wears a silk scarf also. So even in this cover, and I objected to it as misleading, he looks like, through American eyes, as a transvestite. Therefore, second edition, no blue lips, but still some problems. Now, several editions, because these sold out thanks to my students who had to purchase it. The Traveler, the real title, by the way, a little title is Traveler and the Moonlight, and in 1990 I did publish some excerpts from it, none of which were revealing, but here's another. And finally, the 50th anniversary in 1995, we came out with a hardcover book, and my students had the name of Antol Szerb inscribed in the Holocaust Memorial Wall on Miami Beach. And that was kind of nice. Now, I did retrace the steps on a Fulbright grant back in 1988, and there's a terrible photo of me going through Rome. My mother, when she looked at this, she said, "Son, you look like a Jew." Let me pass this around. One thing about self-published books, they make such lovely photographs inside, don't they? All right, let me pass this around. If you touch these, they'll fall apart. They're so old and badly done. Okay, now let me get the real book, and my topic for today, and my talk is not last longer than 30 minutes. If it does, this is to let the bats out, something else. I'm going to give this to Steve. Did he take off with the...
I'm here.
Oh, I thought you took the proclamation and ran it. Here you go.
Thank you.
It's a library book, but I want your take on it. Honey, would you open a drink for me because I'm getting a little... Okay, here we go. Traveler and the Moonlight. Today, a friend of mine, Greg, we talked about this, and there's some problems with the book. One is a huge question I ask my students: is he gay? Is the protagonist gay or not gay? Well, that's interesting. It's hard to tell. Now, let me tell you about something called subliminal homoerotic texting. Texting, that word is probably the wrong word. Should probably use messaging, because kids text. We don't text. Some of us may do. I will read you just the first page, and when you hear some word that you think is, your gaydar goes off, just raise your hand. If it's one word, and let me know, because individually these words pop up, and they may be innocent, but in the aggregate, they accumulate, and they have an accumulative effect. That's how subliminal works. They ought to say it begins with a French epigram from Villon in French. For some, it's already a flag. Villon, right? Okay, page, just a page. On the train, nothing was amiss. It started in Venice with the alleys. It was when the Vaporetto ferried back from the main station and abandoned the Canale Grande for a shorter route that Mihai first noticed the alleys on his right and on his left. At the time, he was barely aware of them, being then enchanted with all that was Venetian in Venice, water shimmering between houses, gondolas, the lagoon, the city's brick red and pink gaiety. How many do we have so far? We have ferried back. We have Canale Grande, right? It sounds like you're ordering something. See, but these are unfair flags, unfair subliminal signals. But there they are. So let's get past pink gaiety, shall we? Because Venice, after all, is pink. And gaiety in those days just simply meant happy, right? This was Mihai's first time in Italy at the age of 36 on his honeymoon. His far-reaching travels had taken him everywhere. He spent years in France and England, but always avoided Italy, feeling the timing was never quite right, that he wasn't prepared for it just yet. His Italy was for adults only, the province of passionate men eager to breed bambini, and he secretly feared it just as he feared intense sunlight, the cloying scent of flowers, and women who were breathtakingly beautiful. Now, the whole idea of... Go ahead.
No, I was raising my hand.
Okay, yes. This air of being cosmopolitan and using exotic foreign language in certain ways, being able to order wine the right way, which he does, has come to mean part of our gay-lesbian culture, for example, especially for men. So basically, the cover I showed you before, again, we have to keep in mind, is he simply cosmopolitan, European, a man of fashion? Is he simply eccentric? Or is there more than that? Now, if you go to the original, I mean, it says red brick pink gaiety. I could have used another word, cheerfulness, but... Now, so far, this is only page one. Let me go to another page, which is maybe a bit more telling, because he does a few things. Well, for one thing, he's 36. That's kind of old, right? To be getting married. And on his honeymoon, if you read the first 30 pages, he leaves his wife to get a drink. Just nothing more than... feels like a drink, and maybe take it up to the hotel room and so on, but he keeps walking in the alleys. Even the word alleys in certain cultures, even here, suggests what? Some kind of activity that's clandestine, All sorts of things happen in alleys, more than, spitting the bottle or trying to avoid broken whiskey shards and blown prophylactics, right? So here I am on page 73. He's haunted by this creature. He feels in a paranoid way he is being followed. It's always a man. And watch who follows him and how the man is dressed. This is in Italy. Once he bolts from his wife, and he's on the run from his wife on his honeymoon. The train separated them, and he feels emancipated. She's a rich woman. I know you were bothered by that because you identify with the wife. I understand that. Yeah, I Didn't you have, those of you who are men and married, didn't you ever feel like John Updike's book, Rabbit Run, Run, Rabbit, Run? Did you ever feel like passing your place of work at Ford Motor Company and keep on driving out west, San Francisco? Leave your class of 6th graders behind. All right. Anyway, so he's walking. He rents a cheap albergo, which is a hotel room. Not much to select from in such a small town. Before supper, he took a brisk walk through the alleys. Again, here we go with the alleys of Spoleto. Clouds covered the moon, blackening the city's already dark streets, and instead of embracing him as did the rose-colored alleys of Venice, they constricted his spirit. Somehow he had come to a section where the streets became darker, more insidious with each step, where open walkways led to doors each more enigmatic than the next. There was hardly a soul in sight when he lost his way, except for the person following him. He spun around. Just then a tall, darkly clad figure slipped around the corner. Seized by unspeakable terror, Mihai hastened into an alley, narrower, smokier than the others. But this alley ended in a cul-de-sac. At the face his pursuer. Now, when I translated this, my wife and I had this argument, my wife and I. She makes sure I do American idioms and not get too lost in where I am. And she wanted a dead end at cul-de-sac, but I think in his persona, it would be cul-de-sac, wouldn't it? Mihai took a few wavering steps toward him, then suddenly stopped cold. The man was dressed in the fashion of the last century with a black cape and a white silk scarf. Silk. Now, if I would come with a silk dickie, which I own, I bought it because since I was declared Poet Laureate, I thought, you know, I hit this store on 49th Street on a corner. It actually catered to African American gentlemen and boys, and I got this scarf, but it's too much. I don't even know how to tie the damn thing. So white silk scarf. I noticed that in the picture I showed you that's going around, there's a long neck. Men with long necks, because usually females have swan necks, except, you know, there are exceptions. Like Leda and the Swan, Zeus, came in the form of a swan. To be, you know, I guess it's graceful, but it's also feminine. Now, why didn't he come in the form of a duck? It's almost unimaginable. A duck and a woman, that just doesn't work together. But a swan, yes. And his old, strangely creased but soft and hairless face, this soft and hairless face. You wonder what that's all about, huh? I mean, some of you girls, you like a soft face? You know, like men to have soft faces? Like the old bon vivant and all of the soft face, or ruddy, and that is, I guess, which James Bond you prefer. But this is a hairless face. Behind this strangely creased but soft and hairless face was a vulgar smirk. I would ask my students, make a vulgar smirk for me. Yeah. Hey. Yeah. Holding out his arms, the man screeched a thin, effeminate, in a thin, effeminate voice, Zachramo. Now, Tomasito, what does that mean? Zachramo. It's just a name, and it's a simple name, an Italian name.
It's an affectionate.
Or something like that. Zachramo.
Version.
And Mihai, no. Imagine this guy just lost. No, shouted Mihai. The stranger left, mouthing apologies. Mihai saw that the vulgar smirk on his face was nothing more than idiocy. He was followed by a mentally challenged guy, just staggering around, but no! What is this? What is he afraid of? Several explanations. One, again, is it his homosexual self? He's in super denial. I'm told that it's quite impossible because men are aware of this at age 5 or 6 or even younger. Or is he haunted by the ghost of his friend Tamaj, who died by suicide? They had a suicide pact to take morphine, and Mihai bailed out. And Tomasz died, maybe felt guilty, and in those days suicides could not be buried in a Christian cemetery. He had to die unmourned. This whole novel is one way about, Stephanie, you're late for class. So, okay, so but this goes on, he's being followed by men. Did you ever think you were followed by a man? Anyone? Any of you?
I've been stopped.
On a good night. In the golf course, yeah. And near the end of the novel, he is the one doing the following, and he seems to like Englishmen. He's an Anglophile, and he loved English men. He loved English gentlemen. You know, the Brideshead we visited, the English aristos, who were, you know, that played games, charades, where the sexes blurred. He just loved that. He was kind of a thespian. That's another explanation for this eccentric. Maybe he's an actor, he's a thespian. They played enough dramatic games. In this particular scene, he sees this English gentleman and supposedly his family, but impeccably dressed. Again, with a very European, I think. You know, that kind of Europeans that when you sit, they cross their legs. There's an American for you, Steve. You're sitting like an American.
You too.
Okay. Looking, everyone's worried about. We have an intellectual, ladies and gentlemen, right here. Okay, so he is going to be following this English gentleman obsessively, and it's also symbolic that he's at the grave of John Keats. Now, all the romantic poets, if you look at them, with the exception maybe of Wordsworth, they're quite different. Just photographs or daguerreotypes or whatever you had, or sketches, they are effeminate. Shelley is effeminate. Byron was known to have physical relationship with many, many men. Orgies. He also had a soft and pale and melancholy face, I think. But he was pissed off about this. He had a limp. And he was short. So he was an Anglophile. He's chasing this man here. Watch this, how he stalks him. It was darkening. Mihai stooped as he walked. This is a cemetery now. If you've been to the Protestant cemetery, my wife and I tried to chase down John Keats's grave, couldn't find it, gave up. She had a low blood sugar attack, and I pissed and groaned. Well, he came all the way to Rome. It was darkening. Mihai stooped as he walked, barely noticing the streets. Down a dark alley, he bumped against somebody who said in English, "Sorry, honey." Mihai looked up, and what he saw was the same Englishman who'd frightened him so much at Keats' grave. There must have been a strange expression on Mihai's face when he looked at him, because the man quickly tipped his hat, muttered something, and rushed off. Mihai turned around and riveted eyes on him. Let's play the game again, where you raise your hand if your gaydar goes off. Now, when you rivet your eyes on someone, you're really nailing your eyes on somebody. Would you like to have a man rivet his eyes on you?
Yeah, if you're one.
I was like, no.
So watch for these words. Yeah. For a few moments only, then he hurried after him with determined steps without thinking about why. As a boy, under the spell of detective stories, one of his favorite pastimes had been to tail strangers. Ta-ta-ta-tum. Tail. Following them for hours, taking great pains not to be noticed, spotted. He didn't just go after anybody. The person would have to be somehow symbolic in some Kabbalistic way, like this Englishman. It couldn't have been empty coincidence to have run into him twice on such a symbolic day in such a symbolic city, and on both occasions to arouse in him such unreal fear. Something had to be behind all this, and he would have to go to the bottom of it. Behind and bottom. Add that into the equation. With the excitement of a private eye, he stalked the Englishman through tight streets out to the Corso Umberto. His childhood cleverness had not left him. He shadowed his man unnoticed. For a time, the Englishman walked up and down the Corso. Then he sat down at a terrace cafe. Mihai also sat down, sipped on vermouth, and spied on the Englishman, convinced something had to happen. What? It seemed as if the Englishmen were not so calm and expressionless as at Keith's grave, under the well-drawn features and the alarmingly clear skin. Why is this clear skin alarming? Some life pulsated after all. The restlessness, no more apparent on his smooth English countenance than when a bird's wing skims the lake. Yet he was restless. Mihai knew the Englishman waited for somebody, and he too got caught up in the wave of anticipation which mounted inside him with alarming insistence. So the words aroused, mounting, alarming insistence. The Englishman kept glancing at his watch. Mihai could barely remain in his chair. He fidgeted. And we all know fidgeting is a sexual stuff. If you see on a bus and you see a female looking at you and fidgeting, something's going on. Am I right? Unless she has to go to the bathroom. That's the other explanation there. He fidgeted, ordered another vermouth. Too much tension here. Then a maraschino. It was not the time to get frugal. Tomorrow he was going home. A sleek limousine stopped in front of the cafe. Its door swung open. A woman glanced at him. At once the Englishman jumped in and into the car. We sped away smoothly, silently. All it took was that one instant, as the woman materialized in the car door as an afterthought, and more with his mind's eye, that's the third eye, Steve will tell you, mind's eye, than anything else, he recognized Eva Ulpius, Tamash's sister. He was in love with both of them. Now I asked Mrs. Szerb who these two fanciful characters were based on in the novel, Tamás and Eva. Tamás the suicide and Eva his sister. And first I said, Tamás, who is Tamás? And she said, well, there's a picture. She held up a picture of a very effeminate, sensitive, idealistic-looking high school fellow. This is Tamás. I said, who's Eva? I said, is she anybody? Same one. She held up the same picture. The one and the same. See, in the novel, he separates the male and the female, and he's, a novelist is several, probably all his characters, aspects of all his characters, but let's see what goes on here. So, Tamás and Eva takes a long time for him, I think, to exorcise Tamás from his spirit and realize that it was his own self. And I probably have to bring, and I do if you read my translator's note, bring Jung's concept of animus anima, that we are whole as Gestalt human beings when we are both male and female. How many of you men, when you opened the paper today, went to arts and leisure first instead of the sports? What kind of crowd is this? You told me they were intellectuals here, Ian. I mean, the men here went for, I had one guest who was going to come, but he went instead to a baseball game. I get it. Okay, I think we have stereotypes and we have archetypes. And these things are really, in real life, they're blurred. We think of the male as, aggressive, right? He can deal with taking out the garbage. Rough, athletic, courageous, insensitive, farting and spitting and smoking cigars. Boxing, fighting bulls, all the things Hemingway did to prove to the world that he was not the girl that his mother wanted him to be. Okay. So we know that these things, that we can have a female who is strong, as Annabelle Corey and the Fool Who Rides the Wheel of Fortune, and independent, because Ergi is certainly a lot more independent than he is. We're more worried about him. He's going through a constant breakdown. He's heading toward Rome. And I remember on the blackboard once, I drew a picture of Rome as a circle because all roads lead to Rome. And I drew from, north, south, east, west. And I asked the class, what is this? And someone in the back said, it's an asshole. He's going toward an asshole. Okay, so much for that. But the problem is, and it's happening in America, that the very thing is happening from the very first publication. that the novel is being exploited, first by me and then by this British publisher called Pushkin Press. And I just recommended Pushkin Press to Steve. I didn't tell him I'm suing them because my book was stolen. It was Len Rix does not speak Hungarian, number one. He used a midwife, which means a bilingual person, and a committee to make sure things, you know, that he gets the Hungarian right. But he's not a writer. He has no ear for language like Steve has an ear for language. No ear at all. And his book, after all this time, because it was a mainstream publisher, made the New York Times Review of Books classic. Check it out. Journey by Moonlight. A terrible read, and at one time they were telling the world 5 years ago that they were making the film starring Jeremy Irons. Jeremy Irons? He looked like he's too old for anybody in here. You know, they had to dig up Jeremy Irons. He was fine as a young man and all of that, but Jeremy Irons. But the whole thing fell through. But they published it, and then last year republished it because they wanted to make sure that they squeezed me out, because it didn't become eminent domain till 70 years after. That's why this is 70-year special anniversary issue, because it's 70 years since the Hungarian Holocaust. As you know, Mihai was the victim of the Holocaust, and all proceeds, my royalties, go to the Holocaust Museum, the Florida Holocaust Museum in St. Petersburg. Okay, I don't make a penny. I don't want to make money off of these people. So basically, that's my story. I hope I didn't give everything away here, but it's, you know, still up for grabs. In those days, like Thomas Mann, they were so closeted that expression was limited, and they're very tense into these kind of semantic, linguistic innuendos that work on kind of a deep structure, like the linguist Noam Chomsky would say, where content and form are symbiotic, and in the composition they surface the same way for the author, the same way for the translator. You're not conscious of it. This isn't a laboratory. So I hope you buy the book and enjoy it. If you have a Kindle Nook, and you get a book, you get a book. Let me just have it here. I'm going to do like that show where they, you know, you get a car, you get a car. What is that show? Opera. Opera. ESL, I'm from another country. Okay, but with this, you get it for free. I hope to review it. Just 1 or 2 lines. You don't have to knock yourself out. But raise your hand if you have a Kindle or Nook.
Got my Kindle right here.
The best Peter. Do you think it would be a good idea?
Thank you, Stephanie. Now, Stephanie read the book.
I read it, loved it.
She loved it. And go ahead, talk. I'll take over.
I want to ask a question about the book.
Yes.
Do you recommend that the people read the epilogue, the last part of it, before they read the book?
I would. Usually I don't. I never even read the translator's note, but
I think in this case,
since I say such interesting things, I would recommend that. It puts it in the context. We're so far removed from 1936.
you understand it more.
I mean, today's students don't know who Gomer Pyle is. They don't have no clue who's Gomer Pyle. Tab Hunter. Who's Tab Hunter? But they don't know. So, by all means, I think read.
The last 20 pages.
Yeah, because then you get my connection to the book. My aunt's husband's first wife was in the Budapest ghetto. We find out these things. And I found out through DNA test that I'm 11% Ashkenazi. And since then, my friends turned into frenemies, my family into a family. They can't deal with the fact that I'm 11% Ashkenazi. Most of you, just looking around, you look like you have that kind of face.
A little Finnish.
Say what?
Making a joke. A little Finnish.
Want me to finish now?
No, Finnish. Like Finnish.
Oh, yeah.
You get my joke.
The Finnish, yes. Finish. Oh, anyone else for this? Okay, Kurt. Thank you. I hope I didn't zigzag too much for that. I made you work today. Well, that's all I got. If you have any questions, anyone else?
If anybody has read, and I'm sure most of this group has read Virginia Woolf, and what am I thinking, which book?
Women in Love?
Androgyny.
A Room of One's Own? A
No,
Room of
Orlando.
Orlando.
Orlando. I would really suggest that you keep that in mind. I think it's very interesting connection.
Very good. Also, Women in Love. I think that's, there's plenty of androgyny. I would say that I'm comfortable saying that it is about androgyny, and I think we are more androgynous than we think. If you want to read a very interesting book about androgyny among hillbillies, and it's not just, it doesn't have to be just about bearded men and carnies. Fool rides the Wheel of Fortune. Fool riding the Wheel of Fortune. Okay. The Fool riding the Wheel of Fortune. Okay. Any other questions? Androgynous, yeah, we're all androgynous. Those of you, I Cubans, female students who are very, very feminine. They wear high heels and they wear, black brassieres and whatnot. Did I actually say that?
Yeah. How do you know that?
They say, no, there's not a speck of testosterone in their bloodstream. And I said, I wonder if I could have a closer look. And I was able to pull just a little mustache. They all have mustaches. No matter what, no matter how they try to obliterate it, they have hair somewhere. Okay, that's all I got. Thank you very much.
Tijan, this dream's where you belong.